He is 19 years old, and 3 months ago he was tightening bolts on a factory floor in Stuttgart. Now he is standing in frozen mud somewhere along a front that swallows men the way a furnace swallows coal, holding a rifle he was given 6 weeks ago, and 60 rounds he has already learned to ration with his eyes. He earns 30 Reichsmarks a month, less than he made at the factory, but the state feeds him, houses him, arms him, and asks nothing in return except everything. His squad has 10 men. He knows the names of 3 of them. Nobody bothers learning the rest, because within 6 months, statistically, half of them will be gone, to wounds, to frostbite, to a war that consumes replacements faster than it can train them. The temperature drops to minus 36 degrees. His boots are too tight to stuff with extra socks, so when they get wet during the day, they freeze solid by night. He watches a man in his platoon lose 3 toes, cut away by a medic with no anesthesia and no clean hands, because there is no soap left to wash them with. He survives that winter. In this war, survival alone is enough to get you promoted. A year later, he is a lance corporal, and the raise is 3 marks a month for the privilege of staying alive a little longer. He has stopped being the nervous new arrival and started being the nervous new arrivals watch. He knows which officers will get a man killed and which ones might not. He knows to trade cigarettes for bread with the supply units, to sleep with the bolt of his rifle tucked against his body so it doesn't freeze shut by morning. He has learned, without anyone telling him directly, that the vast majority of Germany's military losses in this war are happening on this exact stretch of ground. He has also learned not to ask what happens to the prisoners taken on the other side of the line. Some knowledge, he decides, is safer left unexamined. By 21, he leads his own squad, 10 men who now depend on decisions he barely feels qualified to make. The army has a doctrine for this. Tell a man what to accomplish, not how to accomplish it, and trust him to figure out the rest. It works because it has to. The replacements arriving from home are thinner, less trained, less ready than the ones who came before them. 8 weeks of preparation where there used to be 16. He teaches them how to dig a foxhole that will actually protect them. Half of them die anyway. He writes letters for the men who never learned to write. He divides food that was never going to be enough. And one day, behind a barn in occupied territory, military police hand him a pistol and expect him to end the story of a man who tried to walk away from the war. He does not hesitate. Hesitation, he has learned, has its own body count. 15,000 of his fellow soldiers will not survive their own army's judgment before this war is finished. He tells himself he will never get used to it. He is already wrong. At 23, he commands 50 men as a platoon sergeant, and by now he is quietly running everything: training, discipline, the endless paperwork of keeping human beings fed and armed and alive. There are not enough officers anymore. 2 out of every 3 platoons are led by men like him instead. When a soldier dies, he is the one who collects what's left behind, the paybook, half a dog tag, and writes to a mother he has never met. The lieutenant next door is 19, 6 weeks into command, and looks to him the way a drowning man looks at a rope. He keeps that boy alive as long as the war allows. It is not long enough. When the offer comes to become an officer himself, he says no. He has counted the bodies. Officers do not last. But the war, as it turns out, does not care what he wants. They make him an officer anyway, because the army needs officers faster than the front destroys them. The old requirements, a university education, years of preparation, have quietly disappeared. By the later years of the war, willingness is the only qualification left. He learns to read a map under fire, to coordinate artillery he can't see, to write reports that make a collapse sound like a repositioning. What he also learns, and never says out loud, is that his own position has already been filled and refilled more than 9 times over since the war began. He is not a person to the war machine. He is a slot that keeps needing to be occupied. By 26, he commands a company, 180 men, who eat what he eats and sleep where he sleeps, because the army believes shared hardship builds loyalty, and loyalty keeps men fighting past the point where fighting makes any sense. His company started this war with 200 soldiers. It has been entirely replaced 3 times since. Nobody bothers learning names anymore. There isn't time before the names change again. He has stopped counting casualties as numbers. He has started seeing them as the men who were laughing at his joke 2 nights ago. He is transferred west, away from the front that has already taken 4 million of his countrymen, just before a new front opens that will take millions more. At 28, he commands 800 men, and he has now outlasted almost everyone who started the war beside him. The invasion in the west begins in June, and within a month his division loses more than 24 general officers, wounded, captured, removed from command entirely. The men arriving to replace his losses are boys barely out of school with a week of training, and grandfathers with none at all. He receives orders that no longer make tactical sense and follows them anyway, because questioning orders has become its own kind of danger. He hears, through channels no one speaks of openly, about an assassination attempt against the man at the very top. A plot that fails, and in its failure thousands of people connected to it, guilty and innocent alike, do not survive what follows. He says nothing. He raises his hand when the new salute is demanded. He keeps going, because going has become the only thing he knows how to do. He becomes a general before 30, commanding a division that exists at full strength only on paper. The man giving the orders from the capital has, by this point in the war, removed more than 36 commanders who displeased him in one way or another. The wisest of them learned silence. Some of the wisest chose not to wait for their fate to be decided for them at all. He attends funerals when there are enough remains left to hold one. Everyone around him understands, quietly, that the war is already lost. No one says it aloud. Saying it aloud is its own kind of crime, and then on a morning in May it simply stops. 5 1/3 million of his countrymen in uniform will never go home. 4 million of them lost on the front where his story began, more than half of those in the final 16 months alone, when the war was already unwinnable and men kept dying at a rate of 10,000 a day regardless. The oath he swore to a man who no longer exists ends the way that man's life ended, quietly, in defeat. He takes off the uniform. But for him, the war does not actually end that day. He becomes one of 3 million prisoners held in the East, and some of those men will not see home again until 11 years after the guns fall silent. Somewhere in that number is a 19-year-old who once just wanted to survive his first winter. He got exactly what he asked for and almost nothing else. The uniform he wore no longer exists. The rank he earned no longer means anything. What remains is the question no statistic can answer. What does it actually cost a person to survive something designed to consume them? If you've ever wondered how ordinary men get swallowed by systems built to use them up, this is a story you'll want to sit with. Subscribe if you want to keep tracing the histories that don't make it into textbooks.